Oh, this is probably. So. Yeah. It's like my husband is yeah. Oh, nice. Ready to go. All right, we can get started. Okay. 30-second warning. Not at all. Everyone's coming in there. Yeah, fine. I'm still on all of those. Sorry. All right, we're gonna get started now. I'm gonna call this meeting to order at 3:01 p.m. Welcome, everyone. Hope everybody's enjoying the beautiful weather. We are gonna start off with introduction, and we will be sharing our names, our position, and one word that is a non-negotiable in your personal relationships. Yes. So with that, I'm happy to start. Supervisor Nolia Corzo, also chair of this council, and my one word is forgiveness. And we'll go this way.
I'm Carrie Kirby. I am the executive director at CTK Counseling Center. We provide batterer intervention services, and my one word is authenticity.
I'm Robert Polk in the corner of County Smithtown. I'm also care of domestic violence. You committee is one thing that I instill my people is to have compassion. So I would say compassion.
Hi, I'm Lisa McGuire. I'm the chief defender of the San Mateo County Private Defender Program. And I would say my word would be integrity.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Selena Toy Lee from the Human Services Agency. I'm the Director of Collaborative Community Outcomes, and my one word is understanding.
Adam Ely, Deputy County Executive, County Executive's Office, San Mateo County. I'll steal from Steve Kerr and Joy.
Noel Berton, Clinical Services Manager, looking at division of the HRS. And his word is respect.
Like I'm in good shape because we're only halfway through. My word wasn't going to be stolen. Elisa Cool. I am the Victim Services Program Manager for the District Attorney's Office, and the co-chair of the council. My word was respect, but I will say, we'll say respect, you know.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tricia, and I'm here as representative of the Commission for Status of Women, and that's my word is boundaries.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya B, she, her pronouns. I am the staff person for the Domestic Violence Council. I work for the county here. I guess my word would be, listening.
I'm Katie Bush, Deputy County Attorney and Legal Counsel to the Domestic Violence Council. My word is grace. Probation Services Manager of the Probation Department, Becky Powers, and the DD unit. My word is honesty.
And it was very beautiful as I'm here to share my story and my word would also be listening.
I'm Karen Ferguson, I'm the CEO of Cora, and my word would be communication.
I'm Erin Oram, I'm the managing attorney at the Mateo County Office of the Area Legal Aid, and my word is kindness.
I know, you did it. Hi, I'm Stephanie Walensky. I'm the pro bono director of Legal Aid Society in San Mateo County, and ditto.
I'm Sean Frost. I'm an at-large member of the council, president of Berlin City, and my word is, well, I've had a lot of words, but enthusiasm.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Sarasua. I'm the police chief in Pacifica, and I represent the San Mateo County Police Chief and Sheriff's Association. My word is empathy.
Catherine Anderson, a member at large, and my word is also integrity.
I'm Jackie Rigoni. I'm Chief of Staff for Supervisor Corso, and my word is safety.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to public comment, and I just want to share some reminders about public comment. So we're going to have 1 minute, and I respectfully ask that people, respect the minute limit, and that comments on items not covered in the agenda can be given at this point, and additional comments or comments related to that agenda item can be taken at that time. If they're not related to the agenda item, I am gonna ask that you please end your comment. And also, because of the bylaws that govern this council, no one on the DVC can directly respond to the public comment. We can listen, but I'm happy to connect with people afterwards.
Supervisor Corso, I did create speaker comment cards. If anyone in person has them, they can turn them in. Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up public comment.
Am I supposed to stand?
You can if you'd like.
Doing in person first. So
Sure.
anyone for this public comment, you can turn in your cards. Is it for this general comment or for a specific agenda item?
Well, asking about jurisprudence, I did get here a half hour early. I did read through the whole thing. There's actually nothing specifically on them. I was assuming I at least have 2 minutes to public comments.
You definitely have.
That's it. I don't know. I'm standing before the podium.
You can stand up there if you would like, and we can have Tanya start our.
That's fine.
Time.
Good afternoon. My name is James Ewing Whitman. You know, on November 17th, 2017, I had something happen to me that I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. So that's for my husband. So the domestic violence thing is really quite interesting, you know, but if you're going to pick off a senior lawyer and there's 5 lawyers in the family, expect him to use your best against you. I'm actually here to support my friend Rhonda Reyna, who had a really ugly situation happen with her daughter being taken away from her on June 28th, 2021. And it was probably, out of the 3 people that filmed it, at least one still available on YouTube. It's probably one of the lousiest examples of peace officers that I've seen. And it was done by 8 officers of the Santa Cruz Police Department. And that still hasn't been remedied. But it's caused me to talk quite a bit and really consider running for sheriff in my county. Because, you know, we had a recent election. Once again, Team Democide won. Is that it? I'll respect that.
My name's Rhonda Reyna. Many of you know who I am. This month is Child Abuse Prevention Month. Here is David Murdoch, the man who has been terrorizing me and assaulting me ever since I lived with him, and who I made multiple reports with Melissa Gibbs of Cora. Here's what happens when children report domestic violence. Here's Officer Ruben Badeo kneeling on my daughter's neck. You can see the video. It's on YouTube. Her, Maria Louise, I got my domestic violence counselor certificate from Casa de la Familia, identified a pedophile logo because I'm educated from the FBI who shows us that these logos go out there. So now I'm wondering what's going on with our domestic violence agencies. San Mateo County has 10,000 cases a year because nobody is dealing with the domestic violence. Nobody's arresting and prosecuting men like David Murdoch. There's an extensive list with the Sheriff's Department. Deputy Eric Sakuma, when I first met him, said, we know about David Murdoch.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
There's Martin Fox from San Mateo County Judges Coalition. I want to thank the Superior Court of California, San Mateo County, for agreeing to roll out the Governor's Care Court program as of July 1st. I just learned of that this morning in the legal process. And I want you to take a look at the county's situation and ask the Board of Supervisors to revisit and approve the rollout of Senate Bill 43, which expands the Care Court's jurisdiction to include alcohol and other drug abuse that you think is abuse, but the mentally ill consider treatment, self-care, and consequently it makes a whole group of people who are mentally more eligible. Thank you.
Any more speakers?
Let me ask, those virtually, if you can hear us, simply use the raise hand feature so that I can unmute you and you can make public comment. So we have 2 attendees and neither are raising their hand.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on to action to set the agenda and approve consent agenda items. Oh, sorry.
No.
All right. Do I have a motion?
Yeah.
Second. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Judge Nova? Thank you.
Okay, we are now moving on to our survivor story.
Right. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. And one of the things that Supervisor Corzo has been talking about is really making sure that we as a council have a little bit of time to experience, to listen to people who have lived experience. So Erica Pulido is an individual that I have had the honor of meeting several years ago through Cora. And she has provided her story to a number of different audiences. And so I asked her if she might be willing to come today and share it to us. I'm going to hand it over to you, Erica.
Hi, my name is Erica Pulido, and I am a mom of 3 beautiful children, 2 fast-growing boys, 12 and 10, and a little lady who is 5. I work with a nonprofit organization and have been with the company for 14 years, and I am a survivor. 5 years ago, I was married to my former spouse of 7 years. We had 3 young children together. The morning of November 8th, my former spouse pushed me up against a wall, covered my mouth with his hand, and whispered in my ear, "I'm going to kill you." I built up the courage to call the police. One of the officers who responded to the call encouraged me to file a restraining order. Once I agreed, the officer waited for me and had me follow him to the station to ensure I followed through. Through this process of having called the police, I was able to file a restraining order for me. I started the process with legal aid of filing for custody for my kids to try to protect us. Despite having a restraining order, on November 19th at 11:51 p.m., my former spouse broke into our home through the downstairs bedroom window. He ran upstairs and kicked open the bedroom door. I was in the room with our 5-month-old daughter while our 2 sons were in the next room. I had my phone in hand and was trying to dial 911 when he started to hit me. My phone flew out of my hand. He grabbed me by the hair and started to punch me. I remember covering my face and crying out to God, and him hitting me on my head, my face, everywhere. I did not know until a month later that I had successfully contacted the dispatcher and the attack had been recorded. Police and EMT arrived at my house, and at the time I had no idea how they knew to come, but a good thing they did. They took me to the hospital. I remember being in and out of consciousness. What I remember the next day was a detective telling me that the brutal attack was him stabbing me with a screwdriver. He did this in several places, in my face, my hands, my back, and my chest. He thought he had left me for dead. Through the detective, I was introduced to the DV victim's advocate, Brianna Garcia, who referred me to Cora. Cora has a lot of services that are important, and I was mainly involved with legal services, but I also was involved with the mental health services. I remember I would go with my daughter and they would help care for her while I received their services. They would also give me diapers in a way that gave me dignity and respect. Having to go to court not only to testify against my former spouse, but also to obtain full custody of my children was nerve-wracking. Having the support for both cases by the detective, the DV victims advocate, and Joel Golub from Cora was such a great support. There is a lot of people to my story, but my testimony and the people who helped me, they have become a big part of my life and a positive impact for my kids. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to ask real quick, how long ago did you say that was?
5 years ago, 2018.
I'm glad you're here. I hope you'll stick around and we got some other things that would be interesting for you to know. You want to say anything here to kind of close that out?
I think it's so valuable, right, for us to hear people's experiences. And it is just an incredible honor for me when I get to meet somebody that's gone through our services that is like Erica, because she has said, I want to be more of a voice out there. And so because of that, we have done several presentations together, and you're going to be going off to the national conference as well. And I think, you know, one person's voice can represent so many people's experiences, and that what she went through touched so many of the systems that we talk about here. Law enforcement and you know, where law enforcement was incredibly important, 911 and how important that was. Understanding Victim Services Division and what happened with them, understanding the legal services, the mental health services that are just critical for people to move through this. So I have sat through Erica's story quite a number of times. It is always heart-wrenching, but it is also just incredibly inspiring to know that people can move through this in a short 5 years, and be able to sit in Domestic Violence Council. So just thanks for the opportunity to invite her.
Thank you. I want to ask if we have any public comment on this agenda item.
If someone-
I don't have a card yet for that, but do have a hand raised in the back.
First of all, my empathy for you because that's a very horrible experience and my word I identify as truth. And what I want to know is why someone who experienced domestic violence like myself and other moms I know who've been strangled and have the telltale signs of the bloody eye and the bruises, these are my friends here in San Mateo County, have not benefited from all the services here like you have. I don't have my daughter and I haven't seen my daughter in 3 years after her dad came to my home and strangled me in front of my neighbors and assaulted her. How come she gets the services? I have a video and this has been going on for 8 years. Anybody who knows about domestic violence, and all of you should know that the aftermath is the most dangerous time. So David Murdoch let everyone know he wanted to kill me and he has not been held accountable yet. So that's part of my survivor story. Done videos, it's on my YouTube channel, Forensic Mama, and it's in my federal lawsuit, which explains a lot of what happened to me. And so the corollary I'm still waiting for are the criminal prosecution.
Thank you. Any other public comment? I just want to close out that item by saying, you know, what we hear about in the news is oftentimes like the worst cases and when people don't survive. And so I think it's really important that we hear stories of survival like yours and like others, and that we don't just center them, but that we learn from them and what worked, what didn't work, so that we can have better outcomes for everyone. So thank you again. Okay, we're gonna move on to item number 6, which is our data annual report. And we'll hand it over to Karen and Elisa for the.
So I think Karen is gonna do the lion's share of the talking. But what I would say is, first of all, I wanna say thank you to the folks who did participate and provide us with data. I think it was really helpful for us to take a different kind of a look at the information that you've been providing to help kind of paint a picture about the scope and scale and services accessed in the community. And then I think we have kind of a request at the end after we just go very briefly over the report.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna take us through the report a little bit and then we'll talk about the recommendations on that idea. So this report was divided into 4 sections, which we haven't really called out before, but came from the roundtable for that many of you participated in last summer. And that is persons who are harmed, persons doing harmed, the impact or toll, and then prevention and education. So we had people give data from all the different agencies without forcing us into some specific Excel sheet. We wanted to really see what could everybody provide that was meaningful from their agencies. And so these are the agencies who provided data for persons who were harmed. Go ahead. And we'll tell you that there is a very meaty report in your pocket here. But if you pull out some of the very basic stuff, there aren't necessarily huge surprises. Some of it is similar to what we've looked at before, especially in terms of the demographics. And one of the points we'll circle back on, but the demographics of persons who were harmed is where we have a fair amount of information. And then we sort of fall off from there. But it is primarily women who are still victims, although the number of men has been increasing over time. The age is going to be also an artifact of who we're accepting reports from. So you have that kind of information. But we also learned a lot about, go ahead to the next slide. We learned a lot about looking at ethnicity and race. One of the things that we did call out last year lightly, it's becoming even more clear, is that it is concerning in terms of how we have access and welcoming to individuals who identify as Asian. That county has about 33% of the county as identifying Asian. And we see in the data that was provided, so always with that caveat, only about 9% individuals identify as Asian. So there's pieces that we could really be looking at more. We're seeing gaps in language usage. Again, we actually are overrepresented in having language uses for Spanish-speaking individuals, but underrepresented for Tagalog or Hindi or some of the other languages that might be important. And our special classification. So we know about gender and age, but we don't have a lot of collection about disabilities, veteran status, for example.
I think the other piece that was really clear as we were starting to draft some of the basic language was that I don't think we want this report to be superficial. I think we want to be able to say with good confidence that, you know, that we are meeting the needs of each of those categories on this page, right? So we don't have full data from everyone. So I am using this time to be the tough guy and ask, you know, that our partners, legal services, law enforcement, other providers help kind of fill in some of the gaps for the data to make sure that our analysis is actually accurate.
So the newer section, and we've had this data lightly before, but really calling it out as a full section now is really understanding about, sorry, I switched. We're still on persons who were harmed. We did want to look at the services. So we have information, and again, the report is really meaty. Please go and start reading the report. That is a draft report right now. But one of the pieces that we learned is about services for legal services, for example, which is there are only 36% or so, a third of restraining orders granted. But it's fascinating if you actually look at individuals who were represented, whether that was by, for example, legal aid or by Cora, and that was only because we had data from those, not because other people were not, you know, in line. You see a much higher representation of awarded restraining orders. So that is something that really could inform our services moving forward. So this is where I was going to say, this is new to actually call out a very separate section about the persons who did harm. And so we really appreciate that we actually had information from some of the batterers intervention programs. And again, you see some of the agencies, not some, these are the agencies who provided data into the report. Go ahead. And again, you're not going to see some basic demographic that would surprise you. But one of the things that we will call out is that this is about the level of demographic data we have. So it was just interesting to realize the huge disparity between what we know of persons who experience harm versus what we actually know about those who are doing the harm.
As a caveat, because I like that. I just want to point out the fact that the other gender category for persons who did harm is really problematic because it relies on a classification made to the police or made by police in the police report. And so I don't think that is necessarily an accurate description of maybe how somebody might represent themselves or identify themselves, but that is how the data comes out.
So one of the things we know, actually, can I throw this one over to you?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to just give a shout out to Carrie. Carrie did a lovely job and provided us with some really excellent data about the program that they run out there. Essentially, what we have as baseline data is kind of the number of participants who have been ordered to better intervention programs, and the completed versus terminated numbers. And so I think my takeaway is not really with the pie graph as much as I would really like to know more about maybe why somebody was terminated from the program. What do they need? What services had they accessed or did not access that could have helped them successfully complete the programming? You know, so what barriers are present? I think that would be a really interesting and important data point to collect. So that we can kind of look at, are there additional resources that we need to build in to help support people, you know, from kind of being in the situation in the future. I think that's all I would say about that section, though I do wish it got beefed up a little bit more. But this is again a draft report. I think we can. Later we're gonna talk about what we wanna do with this draft. It is somewhere in there is, but I left it off because I thought I was doing this really quick. I think it's like not exactly 75, like 23.
It was, I think it was 23% did not complete or terminated.
Do we know?
301 was the total number for the county for last year.
And again, the numbers are in the report. I'm gonna say that ad nauseum, because I really will hope that people will actually read the report.
Do we have any information that would suggest whether that's typical or?
That's a good question. I didn't think about comparing it to statewide averages, regional averages, but that's something we can certainly look at. Gary, do you have any?
It's higher than the statewide average. There, a lot of people don't complete better intervention programs. And in my update later, I want to talk about a pilot program that's happening that has the potential, I think, to really improve. Because right now, what one person gets in these programs is the same for everybody, and it doesn't allow for individualization or thinking about competing needs. You know, 65% of people that do harm have substance abuse issues, but we're not allowed to address that in this model. We need more integrated care to have better outcomes. So I look forward to digging into that with all of you.
We also got some beautiful data from our coroner and his team. Some basic information about the DV death review team that's been meeting since 1998. Last year, it was reported that there were 7 DV related deaths. And then we indicated the types or the methods of the deaths. And I think that one of the conclusions that Karen and I drew from that was that we don't have kind of a unified way to gather information about threats, meaning like we don't have somebody who's collecting information on the number of guns that are reported in a home or how often strangulation is occurring. We have incidental data that doesn't line up. What we know is that it's reported for a much more at a much higher rate than it is reported to law enforcement. And so we don't have a clear picture on kind of the threat and the danger and some of those things that might help us look at things like the fact that 3 of our deaths were by stabbing, right? So, you know, we could be adjusting some of our approaches based on this information that we're uncovering.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna call out, so, yeah, specifically the number of firearms that Cora hears about that are in the home versus the number of firearms that are reported by law enforcement when we have those overlap ERP reports are significantly different. So Cora hears about way more firearms than law enforcement may know about. And we don't have this standardized tool that everybody is using that would look at, for example, suicidal ideation, because we had 2 murder suicides in this. So understanding suicidal ideation, understanding has there been threats with knives because we have 3 stabbings. So we could be gathering a lot more information in situations where there hasn't become some terrible calamity beforehand.
So this is not at all to say that our DPAC committee is not doing work. But the kind of the biggest source of prevention and education work that's happening in our community is by way of Cora and some of their programming. So I'll kind of hand that off to Karen if there's anything else you want to say about it.
Yeah, and so, you know, again, this may be a process that has to happen over a couple of years, but we gave people the opportunity, every agency invited to give data, what are you doing in prevention and education? And so maybe it's just to start heightening that so we all think, because I guarantee you there is more prevention and education work that is happening. So these are 3 programs that Cora is specifically doing today about young families with young children, the YAY program, which is the school education program, and Speak Up, which you may have heard about, is 10 cities getting information that increases awareness about victim advocacy and about intimate partner abuse. So I'm hoping that that section will be much more populated next year and that we'll hear about a lot of the other activities that each agency is doing. It also speaks to, though, that there's not a lot of funding for prevention and education, and that, you know, that may be something we all feel as well. Okay, so we started recommendations. And I'm going to say, I just wanted to go back to what Elisa said. So she was the tough guy saying that, you know, we don't have a lot of data from different agencies, but this is the first time we have data, and first time at least in our years, of child and family services, that we have batterer intervention data, that we have the coroner's data actually put into the report. So, you know, there have been some really positive things, and that just speaks to how much more we need. So we do have these recommendations is just a couple that were pulled out of the bigger report. There are more recommendations in the report, looking at understanding demographics better to tell us who we need to reach out to. For example, with batterers intervention, if we could get more demographics, we might understand who terminates and really understand what is that person, who is that person. And so what we want to do, we labeled this draft. It is a meaty report. It's got all sorts of information we did not highlight here. What we would suggest is that we hold that same roundtable. It was a really great roundtable of about 14 or so, 15 agencies, including coroner's office, including Keller Center, et cetera, that were there at the table. And that group really dig in and decide what are the really important recommendations that are coming out of this data. And maybe there's a little bit more data that needs to be fine-tuned. And at July, we will be able to actually put forth a final.
So I think that is all for our presentation. Does anybody on the council have any questions or feedback?
Sure, I know you're waiting on this. And our grants team our data team is working on it now, and I apologize. We have, in the first quarter of the year, Bay Legal has 3 federal audits, and because we're Bay Area wide, we have over 80 grant reports that we have to do. So we didn't get it to you by the first quarter, but it is something they're working on, and I think seeing the presentation is very helpful for us because now I get a sneak peek at like things I can ask them to add in. So I'm also happy to touch base with you guys as I have them run sort of our bigger numbers that we sort of know are useful. If there's specific questions you guys have, the good thing about us is we have a lot of data, which is one of the reasons I can't pull it because me and that system aren't friends. So if there are specific things you want us to pull, like please let me know and we'll add that to them.
Great, thank you. This was not actually a moment for people to confess that they and I don't want to do any federal audits. That doesn't sound fun at all, so.
It's every year we have.
I have a question. This is just based on something I was reading for a legislative committee I'm on. There is a bill being put before the legislature now about tracking murdered Indigenous persons. I noticed that wasn't a stat, but I was doing a lot of reading last night and was not surprised to hear that California actually has one of the highest caseloads, and San Francisco in particular has one of the highest caseloads. And the problem is that they oftentimes go unidentified, unresolved, unsolved. So I'm curious, I didn't see any mention of Indigenous in the breakdown. Is that lack of data or?
No, so this was just some quick highlights and surface. So again, media report in your packet, and we do have a breakdown for persons who experienced harm. We do have a lot more race and ethnicity data. So we actually, Alaska Native American Indian is a population, I will tell you, it's like less than 1%. So are we really having the access that we need? Are we making sure that we actually ask the question? But of the data we have, there is at least some information in there, and it does break down much more by ethnicity and race.
Yeah, Lisa, I would say, just kind of from my memory, the percentage of folks who are seeking assistance and support fall into that category is super low.
Yeah.
It's sub 1%.
Yeah.
And so then that, I mean, it begs the question, right? Based on what you're reading, are we kind of missing that population? It does mirror the folks who get arrested. So we know that it's generally one of the smaller represented populations, but something we should be focused on.
Yeah, this bill would create a law that required more data tracking and more training on how to investigate and report, so that you might be seeing more information.
Do you happen to remember the number
of the bill? It's AB 2279, put by Assemblyman or Assemblyperson Cervantes.
Thank you. Excellent. Yeah, so you'll find more if you just look at the drafts. There is information there for you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. I just wanted to say real quick, thank you for putting this together. I want to encourage everyone again to read the entire report. I think one of the things that we'll continue to build on in the future is hopefully getting more data from more of our partners. I know specifically there's multiple batteries intervention programs that we didn't get a lot of data from. Thank you for being the one. I've always thought about like this report as being a tool, right? A tool that we can share with our cities, with our partners, with the public, so that not only do folks know that they're not alone, but that we can learn about what the actual, what the real status of domestic violence looks like in our county, because, being data driven is always part of being able to make concrete impact. And so I'm glad that we are making significant progress, and there will be more to do, but this is a really good start.
And I think Karen and I really look forward to pulling the group together again to really kind of fine tune the report, because really it was mostly Karen and I just trying to throw together some conclusions and some information, but I look forward to the thoughts of the group.
I have a question. If the council has feedback on the report that is in the meeting materials, to whom do they send that feedback to?
Perhaps you or me?
Yes. So feel free to share your feedback with Lisa or myself, and we will make sure that also Karen receives it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, unless anyone else wants to add anything, we'll move on to public comment. Okay.
We do have in-person public comment as well as virtual.
Okay, I saw someone over here first, so let's start
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question about the data and specifically what gaps are being identified, or if we're going to use the data to identify gaps, because I think that's a really important part of trying to propose solutions to the actual problems. And we know from Joan Meyer's study that our institutions that are here to protect overwhelmingly women and children from domestic violence are overwhelmingly failing. And that is certainly the case in this county among the advocacy and the survivor community. So what I would love to see is some really meaty data on what are the problems with these existing groups and how are you gathering that data? I think, we're very data driven, and I, respect your comments, part of the world. We certainly have tools at our disposal and that data is available somehow. So it's really a question to all of you.
Anyone else over here? Once again, let me show you a picture of what a survivor victim looks like. This is David Murdoch attacking me and my daughter in front of court.
I just want to make sure that we are able to stay on the agenda.
I'm getting to that, witnesses, and everything you've talked about are new laws, and there's a lot of busy work that isn't solving domestic violence. Guns are not the problem, sociopaths are the problem. None of you are talking about holding these men accountable. Arrests and prosecution is not happening. Domestic violence restraining orders are being weaponized against the victims, like myself and Darvo, described by Tina Swivin of One Mom's Battle, and posted on www.alienationindustry.com. 2 more children in my neighborhood have experienced the same treatment by the same cop, and there's a video on YouTube called Legalized Kidnapping. And let me talk about the reunification therapy. These children are then subjected to reunification therapy, which is child abuse. Again, this is Child Prevention Month. Once they claim that they were abused, and none of you are talking about Peaky's Law and all the iterations that are coming out of this.
First of all, point of order. So it says right here that we're given 2 minutes, and that's customary. How come everybody's gonna make comments for 1 minute?
The chair has the right to send public comment.
Of course. Yeah, my name is still James Ewing. I took notes on this. I didn't think I was gonna talk on it, but all kinds of data. I was very involved with my son's education. It was 3 years of preschool through the 5th grade, and then I lost access to him. But I just have to wonder, the what is it? LGBT pedophile stuff. We have a recent Supreme Court justice that cannot identify a man or a woman. Recent Supreme Court justice. We have another Supreme Court justice that worked for Monsanto for 10 years. You wonder why people are so confused and poisoned and weak? Human beings are the only creature that cooks its food and argues over sex.
Domestic violence was a subject of military attention 50 years ago when I was a company commander. It eats at the combat effectiveness of units. It's one of the primary responsibilities of commanding officers is to take care of the families. And you have omitted any mention of the fact that we already have diversion for veterans. It started here at the state level, January 1st. There's plenty of ways to identify veterans and get them the help that they need before the fact. And it's already been recognized. Please include them. I need to help my fellow veterans take care of their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any public comment online?
Yes, we have Renata. Can you unmute yourself?
Hello there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Renata DeMello and I'm a survivor of domestic violence. And I'm here today not only to, as representing myself, but I'm also speaking on behalf of Rhonda Reyna, who is present here today, and many other survivors who are litigants, till this day, after many years of surviving domestic violence, who have reported abuse and now are suffering post-separation abuse in family courts. These litigants, none of them received the necessary support as shown in your slide. In your slide, it showed approximately 3/4 of the survivors had completed the intervention program. And I can say for myself and for the many litigants that I know that they did not receive the support that they needed. Instead, we all faced retaliation for speaking out and seeking justice. I would also like to address the slide that was presented in regards to the recommendations. What I would suggest is to perhaps create a court watcher program where DV cases are being looked at with, my time up?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's it for public comment. Let's move on, unless there's any other comments from the council. We can move on to agenda item number 7, high-risk case review team. And I will share that this agenda item came out of our research and visits to family justice centers in our area, where we were hoping and did learn about some best practices that our county can benefit from. And this item is up for vote today. And that vote will be regarding whether we want to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that a high-risk multidisciplinary team be established. And Lena Silverman will introduce this topic, and then Elisa Cole will share some additional information.
Okay. So the supervisor and Emily and Jackie and I visited the Family Justice Center, the Central Family Justice Center in Concord, in Contra Costa County, to learn a little bit more about the Family Justice Center. And while we were there, we had the opportunity to learn about another program that they have in Contra Costa that we found we could really find some value in. So it is a multidisciplinary team that works on complex cases of domestic violence or intimate partner abuse. Complex cases they define as either cases that are very high risk and or have some complex criteria that means that the person may not be able to access services as easily as others. So Natalie Olias, who is the site coordinator of that Family Justice Center, gave us the documents that they have for this program, and we reviewed them. Basically, the goal of this program is to have a monthly meeting of all the partners from that county to gather together, sort of similar to our death review committee, to go over these cases and ideally have them resolved within the next month or so. So we have a lot of information about it. I don't want to take it from you, Elisa. So
I feel like you did a good job summarizing it. What I would also share is that in Contra Costa County, the high-risk team looks at 5 kind of metrics or 5 areas of need. So they're reviewing cases based on the civil legal needs of a victim, the mental health needs of a victim, law enforcement concerns and safety concerns, safety net needs, so shelter, food, those types of issues, and then other survivor or family. So those are kind of the domains that the group is reviewing these cases for and hoping to kind of make meaningful recommendations and provide support to the survivors. It is based on a section in our penal code that allows for the creation of multidisciplinary teams to do this type of work. I'd be happy to talk about the typical membership, or the membership is outlined by penal code, if anybody would like me to, or I can keep it really general. So generally speaking, I'm sorry, I'll just. In Contra Costa and San Francisco, and I think San Diego was the other place that I got information from. There's usually representation from law enforcement, the district attorney's office, child and family services, advocacy partners, so victim service divisions like mine, nonprofit partners like Cora, the Rape Crisis Center, and then human trafficking counselors are also often part of these groups. They often include mental health professionals, either nonprofit based or county mental health based. Civil legal service providers. I think that some of our partners in this room may also be partners in the Contra Costa County one. And then other members as designated by the MDT, which can be either kind of on a permanent basis or case by case basis. It is confidential and it requires the written consent of a survivor. So you can't just staff a case that somebody feels strongly about. You have to actually get the survivor to buy in, to have their case be reviewed by this team. And the MDT multidisciplinary team is governed by a protocol and memorandums of understanding as it relates to confidentiality and such. So I think the request today is to, we're voting to bring it to the Board of Supervisors to create one. Questions from the council?
How do cases get reviewed?
Great question. From, as it is in other counties, we can establish our own procedures, but as it is, it's typically by any member of the MDT who identifies a case that stands out as highly valid or of concern. And then the person who is in Contra Costa, they call it nominating a case. They would speak with the survivor, get consent, and then bring it to the group.
Let's speak a bit to the idea of having some sort of agreed upon assessment could help with examining that kind of sort of risk.
I have a question in response to your information, and thank you. You said the goal would be to have it resolved in a month or some time frame. What does resolved mean?
So I think it actually means connecting the survivor to service. Exactly, and making sure that they have had meaningful access and that there's been improvement in those kind of domains. And what they shared with us about Contra Costa's model is that they try to have everything like identified within the month, but they will hold on to a case for a few months and do a less formal review to make sure that the survivors are moving through the process.
Do other counties have a way for cases to be nominated not through the MDT?
In the counties that I talk to, no. I think it typically comes from kind of the service providers or law enforcement who are interacting and engaging most often with survivors. But I'm sure we can look and see if there are other models, statewide or nationwide, that have other referral approaches.
Yeah, I'm thinking specifically about how clinics or hospitals or primary care physicians do their own little assessments, and then maybe they can't directly nominate, but they could refer to someone on the MDT.
Certainly.
Is that how it typically works?
My impression is that it's a little bit more formal. So if maybe a survivor goes to a medical facility and says, makes a disclosure, then technically the medical provider could make a referral to the high-risk team. But if they're not linked into the high-risk team, they might have a discussion with somebody who is. But likely that survivor is connected to somebody on the team. would make the nomination.
There's a member at large, Cindy Hunter, is in the back.
Oh, sorry, Cindy. Hi, I just wanted to mention the Geiger Institute. I don't know if that came up in your high-risk team research, but they're like the model, the Office on Violence Against Women funds actually a homicide reduction model. So the purpose is identifying high-risk cases as early as possible, using right, like danger assessment tools, but also not just supporting the survivor, but monitoring and supporting the person who harms. So I just had read about this many years ago and kind of looked at this gold standard. I'm not sure, I'm not saying that Contra Costa or other sites are doing that, but I do know they offer free training and free support to communities. So it's excellent.
I think, you know, my expectation and understanding of the process would be that once we bring this request to the Board of Supervisors, then there's gonna be a group or a team who's gonna be responsible for kind of identifying the best practices and then, you know, bringing that to life. That's the hope. But thank you for the excellent reasons.
San Mateo County used to have a high-risk network team that was with and through Cora, or agencies would contact it. I believe Redwood City was in charge of it at one time, but to assist other, like with veterans, to assist with somebody who may reside in a different city than the survivor. And Cora was part of the team when I was at Cora to make the assessments and come up with either if, you know, weapons had to be removed, if there was a veteran that needed assistance, other ways to handle that.
Well, Kathy, I believe we will be talking to you. Thank you. That's a piece, I think, of kind of the knowledge that we didn't have when we were having this conversation. So it's really helpful to know. Anything else from the council?
I'll just say that when we were speaking to Contra Costa, they really talked about how it increases cohesion against the within the member providers, so that you eliminate silos. So this group knows about a really dangerous situation, but somebody else ultimately encounters them and had no idea. That's what we want to increase, and so that was a real big strength they mentioned. They also mentioned that there are cases where the survivor would want to participate, but the group could still get together and talk about, if I had a case kind of like this, like how might I deal with it? So it was also a place for people to brainstorm when they weren't officially handling the case.
How is it staffed? Any possible
Well, I think it depends on how this county chooses to organize. Because you do need somebody who's going to be kind of the lead, who's gonna coordinate and track the information. So I don't know.
One of the questions that I remembered being asked last time about this was, will it prevent EV deaths? And the honest answer was not necessarily, but for all of the cases that we know where victims, the survivors survive, right? It greatly, I think, improves their quality of life and the resources they have access to, and that can't be understated. So just wanted to close out with that. Let's go to public comment. Right? Yes.
Hi, Rhonda Reyna, once again, an actual domestic violence survivor who has networked with thousands of victims, not only in San Mateo County, but across the country, who I talk to regularly. Once again, I am hearing the identifying, targeting, and exploiting of domestic violence victims to monetize them. We already have California Title V of the Penal Code that says you're supposed to have these multidisciplinary teams in existence, but the problem are bad cops. I've got Geronimo Elias Urania, a deputy here in San Mateo. I've got District Attorney Inspector James Haggerty, who've committed federal crimes of perjury, 18 USC 1621, violation of my civil rights and discrimination under color of law leading to 2 kidnappings, 18 USC 241 and 242, among many other federal offenses that they've committed by not protecting me, by not arresting David Murdoch, by not doing an investigation. So none of this is gonna work.
Yeah, hello, my name is still James Lee. You know, on a high-risk review team, this was interesting to listen to. Yeah, I don't know why, you know, if there's videos and stuff of people hurting women, why they haven't been prosecuted. What else is not being discussed? You know, I attended a 52-week domestic violence class on Friday nights from 6 to 8:30. There was one thing that the 7 to 17 men had in common. None of us wanted to be there. But I could have taught that class. I had pretty good attendance. And it's just interesting to be a witness here. I mean, it's not that much to talk about stuff. So the word I chose was jurisprudence. I helped write a term paper in 1987. Took a poli-sci 7 class. American politics from a Black perspective. The term paper was analyzing concepts of judicial review and show the remarkable role that John Marshall played in the establishment of American jurisprudence. So thank you.
Anyone online?
Please raise your hand if you have public comments.
Okay, not seeing any. Unless there are any other comments from the council. Let's move on to item number 8. Oh, wait, no, we need to vote, I'm sorry. Getting ahead of myself here. Okay, do I have a motion? Second? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. I'm gonna take a second to appreciate that passed. I'm excited for this to come to our county, truly. Okay, moving on to item number 8, Survivor Advisory Group. This also is a recommendation, but it is not up for an action. So since the beginning of my time on this commission, and actually before that, I've always felt like it's really important that we do center the voices of survivors and recognize that not all survivors have the same perspectives on not just their specific situations, but on navigating the systems that they navigate. And so, you know, we've had discussions previously about the creation of a survivor advisory group. We had Rose Muhar, who brought in 2 survivors of human trafficking to talk about what their survivor advisory group was like and the impact and the outcomes that they felt were beneficial. And in March, we continued that conversation at our task force meeting. And included in your materials for this meeting was the Voices Toolkit from Alliance for Hope, which has more details about how to create a survivor advisory group. And so I want to recommend that I want to ask that we consider asking for volunteers from this council to work on creating recommendations for what a survivor advisory group in San Mateo County could look like. And then come back to the DVC at the next council meeting with, you know, concrete proposal. I recognize that there might be questions. I definitely hope that we can discuss this. And yeah, love to hear from folks.
I would be happy to volunteer, but I would have lots of questions for you of what data you're actually looking for and if it's specific to survivors, how to get that data.
Thank you. I don't know that it'd be necessarily focused on data, more like maybe, I think in the toolkit it talks about how survivors could maybe help inform the work plan and some other concrete actions. But probably also does have to do with data, honestly.
And here is the method for contact with all of, the commission and all of the pieces that go into place. How would I get that, those conversations?
Absolutely. Anyone else?
I just scanned the Voices toolkit, and in my previous job, we had mentors that were both on domestic violence and they were advised our organization. But as a Brown Act body, I have questions about that. Obviously we could probably shape it in a way that that's not a problem, but we should probably do that from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Are you volunteering? Sure. Okay.
Just making sure. Just a comment. The Voices toolkit is large, 65 pages, but I did print out 3 copies, hard copies that are over here. Should you don't have access to the internet or to a computer, I wanted to make sure that the hard copies were available.
Thank you, Tanya. Anyone else?
So it sounds like we have 2 volunteers to kind of lead the effort to make some recommendations. Is that what I understand?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes. And also, if anyone in the public is interested, please feel free to reach out to me as well. And I also just want to close this one out by saying that I recognize that I think for me, one thing that never changes is I feel like when we have the community involved, you get a better outcome, and channeling energy to changing systems and not just allowing for people to feel heard, but allowing for concrete changes to be accessible to folks most impacted, I think is it's all part of the work. And so that's like the hope of this group. I don't know that it would be a Brown Act body. I don't think it could work perfectly like that. But I'm excited to dig into what could work for this county and how we can channel energy into something really productive and powerful for survivors. Okay. Moving on. Oh, sorry. Public comment.
Hi, Rhonda Reyna. Once again, I really hope that you are genuine in your intentions to wanting to bring survivors to help get things on track. I'm really tired of trying to get prosecution and trying to get justice for me and my daughter. And I am looking forward to participating in this group. Thank you.
Anyone else? Here we have online hand. Yes.
Can you unmute yourself?
Good afternoon, Renata DeMello here again. I would like to thank you all for putting this together. It is very hopeful for domestic violence survivors to feel that there are people that are willing to put something together and help. Just like Rhonda said, if you're genuine and you're putting your best foot forward, we would like to participate and be a part of this in any way, shape, or form. I will leave my email in the comments, and I'm looking forward to being more involved with all of you. Thank you.
So can I just clarify the recommendations to create a small subset of people to come up with how to do this?
Mhm.
Okay, I would suggest the motion that the council approve to do that.
Okay. So, as a chair, I prefer not to make that motion, but.
Yeah, so I think we're looking for a motion to create an ad hoc survivor advisory group.
So
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And now we're moving on to item number 9, Victims of Crime Act cuts and impact. Karen.
So I felt like it was time that the DVC take a little bit of a look at the Victims of Crime Act in terms of what the impact is going to be. This impact will certainly be experienced by Cora, but will be experienced, as my colleagues are nodding away, by other agencies within the county as well. And it does impact as well sexual assault services. So for example, rape trauma will be impacted by this. So I wanted to make sure everybody had this. There is a 1-pager in your handout that gives you a little bit of a background, but basically this is federal funding that is gathered by white collar crime. There is a fund, and then that is dispersed to all of the states via a formula. And that fund has been shrinking over time, and it is now time that the federal government has called it as this is now where the cuts need to be put forward to the state. So it's not like anybody at the federal level cut anything. The fund has just depleted, and that diminishment is being passed on. Can you just go back one second? Yes, forward. Yeah, so the federal budget, we were waiting, and I was hoping maybe there would be a fix and I wouldn't have to present this, and my colleagues, we would all be happy. Unfortunately, there was a very touch of a fix, but overall, there's still $630 million that is a shortfall that will be passed on to the states. For California overall, that's a 43% reduction for sexual assault and domestic violence services, for services like legal services as well as general advocacy. The state is looking at various fixes. So there is a bill called the Gabrielle Bill 2432 that would create the state level VOCA fund. That would be a great fix. It is terrific, but it would not actually have an impact for several more years. And then there are some more immediate impacts. The Reyes Bill 1956 would step forward and potentially create a fix by the year after, but we're still going to be facing this coming year. So I just want everybody to understand the impact. Go ahead. So one of the most immediate is that the state did end some funds proactively. So there's a fund called XC that comes to, this one goes to rape trauma and to Cora under the county.
And victim services.
And victim
Yes,
services,
so we
apologies. All three. And so this one, they timed it out. So as of December 2024, there will no longer be this fund, which for Cora specifically supports school liaison services, supports rape trauma, and support. Right, so those services are gone. The next one. Next slide is legal services. So what they did is the state of California has said those grants will be 50% more competitive. And we already went through that cycle. So some of my colleagues have already experienced this, where there just were not as many awards as there have been before. And so we already in this county have experienced a reduction in the legal services that are going to be available for the coming year. Or as part of the legal services has remained steady, but we're all of one. We all collaborate together. So legal services in this county have experienced a diminishment. So these are the other services that Cora has grants for that will be already will be on the reduction schedule. Mental health, all of our rental assistance program that comes through the state. hotline money, safe house money, community education, and our data systems. And they will face a 30% reduction, starting anywhere from October to January and going forward, unless there is a state fix. What that means is that, sorry, go stay to that one for one more minute. What that means is there will be a shrinking of mental health services. So we just will not have the capacity. We're going to have to reduce how many clinicians we're able to have on staff. We will not have as many households that we have slots for in terms of rental assistance. We are going to have to figure out how to handle our hotline because we can't produce a hotline. So we're going to have to borrow money from other sources in order to keep that hotline going. Safe house, we're going to have to reduce the capacity number of beds and the staffing pattern that we have there. Community education, we may have to significantly decrease that. And we're trying to figure out how to have a data systems person so that we can keep doing data. So go ahead. I will just say this is in the climate that I just want everybody to realize we're post-pandemic now. So there's no more COVID money that's coming. I'm looking at one of my colleagues in Santa Clara as well, like we're all experiencing this. Foundations are changing their priorities. So Cora has specifically been told that there are certain foundations that because of their priority changes, they will be sunsetted in a year or two, not because of anything Cora did, it's just the foundation is shifting in terms of what its focus is. And then obviously the county has really revamped its Measure K, and that is understandable, but that does mean that we don't have the stability of knowing what funding is going to be supported going forward to even manage these reductions. Last slide. Bottom line, these are where we're looking at for specifically Cora with, and I'm sorry, I did miss the bullet of already we have the shrinkage of legal services within the county. This is not speaking for sexual assault services as well, victim services.
Well, and just on that topic, we had a 5-year elder abuse grant program that paid for the cost of a victim advocate, who kind of worked alongside our special investigators and PA. And when we went up for the reapplication for that grant, there were, I think it was 83 applications and they only approved 12. So we were not one of the 12 that were approved. And so this is just happening kind of on a large scale to all victim service providers, kind of regardless of what area you're providing support. It is feeling very much like a crisis, but we will continue to kind of figure out ways to move the work forward. And just a note, we will continue to provide dedicated elder abuse services even if we don't have the grant, but it just pulls from, you know, somewhere else that we're trying to, some other program we're trying to do. So I would say across the board, we're all feeling something like this.
And I appreciate that. And I want to say Cora is strong and Cora will continue to be providing its services, but there is going to have to be a change in capacity, and there will be some programs, the ones that we just know we need, prevention, education, awareness, that those are the less essential to helping the immediate victim survivor. And so those are the ones that unfortunately end up being the ones we have to take funding from in order to ensure that there is a hotline, there is safe house. So it's just to I think this body needs to know that this is happening for all of the agencies that are impacted by this funding, and that there is a lot of advocacy that is happening, but that we're also going to need a lot of support.
And perhaps this is a good time to plug those two bills. Perhaps you can do some research and support them if it's appropriate for your position and situation.
Yeah, Rhea's bill, AB 1956, and the Gabrielle bill, AB 2432.
I'll just add, they're both ones that we as legal services have invites to participate in, so we are working on those bills. And if anyone has questions about what committee hearings you'd like to join or letters of support you'd like to write, we can certainly share that contact.
Yeah, I would ask that, can you send that to Tanya and then you can send it out to everyone, please?
Yeah.
Nicole. Karen, did you already say the funding cycle is impacted? Is it fiscal year, July 1st, 2024.
Committee of California started proactively planning this past year. And so the Excel grant that affects legal services already was impacted. XC was already impacted. Some of them will be impacted for the October. I don't think there's anything much that's happening for July. Maybe, I don't think July. So the next big ones will be October, and then the January 1st will be the rest of it.
So I think they're just, this LOES, the state is trying to prevent some massive catastrophe. So they've been doing it in a tiered fashion with the hope that there would be a backfill or other legislative fixes that could help. And so now we're kind of at the stage where we're living it. So it makes sense.
I just want to note, there's about 5 minutes left in the meeting and we still have 3 more agenda items. It goes on the back page of the agenda and a lot of reporting out, so we might have to modify the report outs. I'll leave that up to the chair.
Okay, why don't we take public comment on this? And then after this item, we can reassess the agenda.
Hi there, Rhonda Reyna once again. I did seek help from Cora. I was working with Melissa Gibbs, who had gone with me to make a report to Karen Barker with my. Can you make sure about that? Yeah, it is. You just got into my time when I was talking. Anyways, I suggest taking the resources you have and targeting it on the existing cases that just got dropped because of COVID, such as my case. Maybe Ms. DeMello has other people who could benefit, because once you make a template of getting one case done start to finish, then it makes it easier to provide prosecution and adjudication of cases of domestic violence, and therefore setting an example to all men who abuse women that they're going to be held accountable, instead of constantly having meetings and funding for employees and pensions and data collection, which isn't solving the problem. So focus on a case. I nominate my case, maybe Ms. DeMello's case, and some others.
Any other public comment? Okay, thank you for the update. Before we move on, let's see. Does anyone have a suggestion for which agenda item we?
I mean, I suspect we should just move forward with item 10, because I think there's some updates there and just we ask that everybody keep it brief.
Thank you. Okay. Let's move on to item 10, DV task force updates. So we did get written updates from the task force working groups, and I'd like to open those up for questions or comments. Okay, public comment. Okay, let's move on to committee reports. And we can start with DV Awareness Committee. I don't.
Oh, that's really great. Hi, everybody. Our update is that we wrapped up the art contest for the middle school and high school students, the Healthy Relationships Art Contest, and we selected 2 winners. They've already been awarded their prizes. If Tanya, if you have them, we can share them on the screen. That is all I have until next time.
Yeah, while Tanya's pulling those up, reporting out for the legal processes committee. We met today. We will discuss some updates and I don't think there's anything significant to report today.
Okay. Nicole, I couldn't pull up the second piece of art.
Okay.
I even tried to download it.
Yes.
Yeah, so what I may do is get a screenshot of it and email it to the group.
Okay, no problem. But for now, we do have this painting. This is a physical painting submitted to us by Sienna Lee from Mercy Burlingame. She's a sophomore and her piece is called Horizontal Relationship.
Thank you for coordinating. I think it's really neat to see the art coming from kids in the community.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment? Moving on to announcements. So our next council meeting will be July 11th. And if you or you know anyone that would like to volunteer for the storytelling piece, please reach out to Tanya or Jackie Bugoni. Public comment on announcements?
I have a quick announcement.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Sorry, don't relate. I just wanted to let folks know that our Daly City Clinic had to currently an emergency close temporarily because our clinic site fell under construction unexpectedly. It's a long story. But so we had to temporarily close that. We are looking for a new spot. If anyone has a place in Daly City that might be appropriate, please let me know. I know the court has also mentioned South San Francisco might be an option. So we're trying to get it figured out as soon as possible. In the meantime, anyone who you were going to send to the Daly City Clinic, please have them call us. We're setting up alternate appointments. We will go out and meet folks in the community, whatever we need to do to make that happen. But just for the next couple weeks as we try and figure out a new spot, please don't send folks to the community center there. Thanks. And I think same goes for housing clinic, right?
Yeah. Any other announcements? Okay, we are adjourned at 4:30. 4:30.
Yes, I think for life. Hey, it's gonna be your neighbor's gonna turn to construction. That conference, we're gonna
Start off.
Yeah.